Monty Williams was fired as head coach of the Phoenix Suns. News was announced last night, bringing about an end to his 4-year tenure in the Valley of the Sun. And once again, Williams, like Mike Budenholzer, as I discussed in the video talking about his termination, like Nick Nurse, are prime examples are what are you doing for me right now? It doesn't matter if you win in the NBA. It doesn't matter if you win big. And I dare anybody to tell me that Budenholzer and Williams didn't win big, that Nurse didn't win big. It don't matter if you win big. You better win big every year, otherwise you're in risk of losing your job. We've got a coaching cycle right now where both coaches from the 2021 NBA Finals are gainfully unemployed and looking for new jobs. Okay? We have not even reached the 2-year anniversary of the 2021 NBA Finals. Both coaches are gone. Nick Nurse won an NBA title in 2019. He's gone. Frank Vogel, NBA title 2020. He's gone. Don't mean to sound redundant, but that's the life of the coach. It sucks. It really does. No, I'm not going to sit here and say this was a big surprise to me. I'm not. In fact, I knew as soon as the final buzzer sounded in Game 6 of the Western Conference semifinals, where they were just obliterated and embarrassed by Denver in an elimination game. Second straight year, by the way, that they went out there in an elimination game that they needed to win and shit the bed. I knew that changes were going to happen. And I knew that Monty Williams probably was not going to survive those changes. You got a new owner in there. Matt Ashiba, he's got no ties to Monty Williams. I mean, it's a dirty business at times. It really is. So no, this doesn't come as a surprise to me. And maybe people can argue it was time. You know, it was time to just put a fresh new voice in there. Okay, fine. But let's not diminish what Monty did in Phoenix. This is a team that hadn't even sniffed the playoffs since the 2009-2010 season. Okay? This is a team that hadn't made an NBA Finals appearance since 1993. Devin Booker wasn't even born the last time the Suns made an NBA championship appearance. Monty Williams let him there. That's why I will sit there and tell you, when we talk about the coaches in the Phoenix Suns and the greatest of them all, I got to put Williams in my top 2, maybe, top 3 at worst. People say, well, D'Antoni never could get over that hump. D'Antoni never coached a team in the NBA Finals, ever. Monty Williams did. Paul Westphal, yeah, he led the Suns to the NBA Finals back in 1993. Look at the team he inherited from Cotton Fitzsimmons. Look at the team Monty Williams inherited and the mess he had to clean up. So I put him number 2. Only behind Cotton Fitzsimmons because it's sacrilegious to put anybody beneath Cotton. I'm just going to say this as nicely as I can, though, to Suns fans out there that are, celebrating this and it's time to get a real coach in there. I've seen all this stuff said. Let's not forget the decade this team had with Igor Kokoskov in his 1 year at the helm, and Lindsey Hunter, and Earl Watson, Jeff Hornacek. Okay, there have been some bad coaches that this team's had. There have been some bad lean times. Maybe Monty wasn't perfect. Okay, maybe Monty's adjustments during games were not good at times. The team went out there in elimination games and shit the bed twice in a row. I felt like, honest to God, I was watching Game 7 of Dallas all over again, watching that Denver game. So maybe we can sit there and make our criticisms of Monty Williams. But one thing we can't criticize is the fact that this man did things with the Phoenix Suns organization that they hadn't seen in a long time. Namesakely, he cleaned up messes. He brought in an air of dignity. He brought in an air of pride. He made Phoenix Suns fans want to watch games again. He eliminated all the excess crap. And believe me, there was a lot of it. May I remind you of what happened with the Morris brothers? For those of you that are Suns fans, you know all too well what I'm talking about. The Morris twins. We remember that fiasco. How about Eric Bledsoe asking for a trade while in a fucking hair salon in Scottsdale? I mean, this is the shit the Suns went through. It was more infighting between the GM and the freaking players than it was, wins at times during the season. I'm not exaggerating about that. Monty came in there and he solidified that locker room in a way that you cannot even see on paper. Okay. So I don't know who's next. I don't know. But I will tell you this much. He's going to have some big shoes to fill because Monty Williams, the coaching job he did in Phoenix, should be honored and recognized and remembered for many, many, many decades to come. Many. And I'm telling you right now, if you think the problems began and end with Monty Williams, you got another thing coming. This isn't the last of them, believe me. They're not just going to change the name who stands out there and barks the X's and O's, okay? Whether it be Nick Nurse, Tyronn Lue, whose name's being floated about, Mike Budenholzer, no matter who you get, some up-and-coming, upstart, assistant coach, it don't matter who you get. And by the way, people saying Tom Izzo, I'm gonna approach that here in a minute. Don't matter who you put on the sidelines, no matter who you put on the court as a coach. There are still bigger problems that are going to be fixed, that need to be fixed. Well, Chris Paul's been great in Phoenix. There's no underselling the job he's done. But I think everybody knew when they made that trade, you were getting Chris Paul for a very short period of time before Father Time caught up. Father Time's catching up. It's there. There's no nice way of putting it. It's there. They need a point guard, somebody with young blood. Whether it's Austin Reeves, which is the name that's being floated out there, Fred VanVleet, Terry Rozier. They're going to have to get a young point guard because Chris Paul's days are done, and the team's aggressively shopping him. What they think they're going to get for him, your guess is as good as mine. I mean, I don't think there's going to be a huge market. As good as Paul has been in the locker room, and as good as Paul has been in terms of putting this team together and helping Monty, bring some stability back to the organization, and as even solid as he's been on the court, there's not going to be a huge market for a 39-year-old man. You might be able to get a lottery pick that hasn't worked out in his current situation. It just needs to change the scenery. You might be able to get a couple of depth pieces. You're not getting a first-round pick for Chris Paul. You're not. And that's not a knock on Paul. It's just reality. And let me tell you the big problem. And this guy needs to go, okay? This guy should absolutely be following Monty Williams out the door. And that's DeAndre Ayton. You look at his body language out there, okay? And it is clear he does not want to be a Phoenix Sun. And the stories that have been told about DeAndre Ayton are not good. His work ethic sucks. He's entitled. I mean, there's so much things that are known about DeAndre Ayton behind the scenes that would blow your mind. Not that he's a bad dude, but he doesn't want to be in Phoenix anymore. And frankly, you know what? You don't want to be there? Hey, far be it from keeping him. Don't accommodate him. Do it. I know they should have let him walk last year. People said they should have let him go. You know what? They were stuck in a tough bind. It's either match the offer of Indiana or lose him for nothing. That was their options. And you cannot lose a guy that still has that ceiling. We saw in 2021 what a motivated, hungry DeAndre Ayton who gives a shit can do. The problem is, when are you getting that? Are you ever going to get that? Are you going to get it in Phoenix where he clearly doesn't want to be anymore? You got to do something. I mean, this is a guy, like I said, who has talent, but you can't teach heart. You can't teach cohesiveness with your teammates. And he right now has none. The only player in that organization that actually is still an ally for him is Chris Paul. I mean, the big regret I have, and we can sit there and say hindsight 2020. I'm not going to sit there and say this was a terrible draft pick, because it wasn't. I mean, I've seen bad draft picks. Kendall Marshall, the 2016 draft, 2 picks in the top 10, both of them bombed miserably. Straight up though, when you look at who was available and what these players have become versus what DeAndre Ayton is, even though he's capable of so much more, this may be the most frustrating. This may be more frustrating than Josh Jackson. This may be more frustrating than Chris and Bender, Kendall Marshall. This may top them all. Because you look at who's number 2, Luka Doncic. Luka and Devin Booker would be great. Go down the line there. We're not even talking top 10 picks. We're talking Jalen Brunson, who is completely revitalized the New York Knicks. It's just Jaren Jackson Jr., who's been really, really solid. Is a great two-way player. I mean, he may not be the all-star, but he'd be an exceptional piece. I mean, that's just what's frustrating about it. Because like I said, Ayton was picked ahead of them all, and I'm telling you right now, a person in the Suns organization who has some major say, and this guy knows a thing or two about basketball, believe me, he's not some ham and egger. He knows the game quite well. Said if this guy played with any kind of heart, any kind of fire, and any kind of balls, he'd be the best player in the NBA. Notice I didn't say the best big man. I said the best player. I asked said person, what's his ceiling if he actually gives a shit? He said, a better Hakeem Olajuwon. That's not insignificant. And I know there's a chance the Suns can move on from him, and he could wind up having a light bulb go off. The problem is, can they wait and see? Can they continue to wait and see if it ever is going to? My answer to that's no. Anyway, Monty Williams out as head coach of the Phoenix Suns. I wish him well. I know he's going to catch on somewhere else next year. The dignity, the class, the pride he has, the ability to coach teams, overcome adversity, and he's overcome it all. He deserves another shot at the sidelines, and I hope he wins an NBA title wherever he goes, because God knows the man deserves it. Thank you for tuning in. We'll talk again soon.